Hey friends, welcome to day one of our Easter stitch along. Today is a short day. I'm trying to ease you into the process. So today we are just going to be doing the inside of our flowers right here. We're going to do all three at one time. And this will make it a little bit easier when we start stitching our petals to be stitching into what's already been done versus trying to do our petals and then kind of going over those stitches and possibly hitting them from the back. So we're going to start with our color 924. If you have a full floss like this and you've never pulled floss before, you want to look for the number and you want to find the little piece that you can grab. And you're going to pull one arm length. Keep this part at your chest and then just pull one whole arm length. And then you can cut. Now I mentioned this in day 0, the video, that you might want to keep this if you have one from the kit, or if you have the PDF and you already printed one out, you might want to keep this nearby so that you can easily reference what we're doing. Although I will try and include it in the description below. So we have our one arm length of 924 pulled, and we're actually going to be using all 6 strands. Later on we're going to be splitting our floss, but this time we're going to use all 6 strands. We're going to tie a knot at one end and then cut off any excess, but not too much, because if you cut too close to the knot, you'll compromise the knot. We don't want that. Okay, I'm going to grab my needle. On the other end that does not have the knot, I'm going to thread my needle. Now this is 6 strand. It's got fuzzies everywhere. This is 6 strand, so it can be a little bit harder to thread your needle. That was impressive. I got it on the first try, honestly. So if you're having just a super hard time, there are needle threaders, I think that's the right word, tools that help you thread your needles. You can also go change your needle size and get a bigger eye if that helps you. But because this is just the only stitch that calls for all 6 strands, I would say just try and make it work, and then for the rest of it, it will just be a lot easier. Okay, so we're gonna get ready to start stitching. So let me get my hoop stand. All right, meet my hoop stand. She is very helpful. I love her. Is she required for you? No. We're doing a few French knots in this piece, not many, but this hoop stand is super helpful when you're doing French knots. But in general, you don't need it, but it's definitely a tool I really love having, and I will link it in the description below. So we're going to be doing, like I mentioned, the inside of each of our flowers, and we're going to be using all 6 strands, and we're going to be doing a not a straight stitch, sorry, a satin stitch. So to do a satin stitch, we're going to start here, this far left. You're going to come up through the back at the top of your flower in the middle. I forget I can zoom in. There we go. Pull your needle all the way through so the knot is touching the back. And you're gonna go straight down. So you're essentially just splitting the flower in the middle. It doesn't matter if you're going straight down this way, that way. This is the direction I'm going. As long as you're going in the middle, you are good. So I'm going to straight down, pull my floss. Sometimes I like to use my needle and put it right here and kind of hold it to help keep it straight, because floss can get a little twisty. And now I'm going to come back up right to the left of this first stitch. And you might want to, let me see if I can turn this and you see it well enough. Ah, I have a weight holding my hoop stand down. It was a little too heavy for me. Okay, so you have that little excess floss from where your knot is, and so when you're coming back up right next to it, that can kind of get in the way, so you might want to just hold that with your finger as you're doing that second stitch. Oh goodness, next time I shouldn't use such a heavy weight to hold it down. I don't really think I need, normally it goes under your leg, but when I'm recording, that just isn't very doable. We're all over the place right now. We're all over the place. Okay, we're gonna make this work, guys. All right, so I've got my second stitch getting ready, and now I'm just going to come right down right next to the other stitch. You're not sharing holes with any of them. You're just essentially making a bunch of vertical lines right now. You do want to make sure your stitches are close enough that you're not leaving a gap between them. And if you feel like you have left a gap once you're done doing the whole thing, because sometimes as you stitch, they kind of push each other together and you might close that gap up. But once you finish doing the whole middle area and you're like, oh, there's kind of a gap there, just go back through and put one more stitch in that area. And as you notice, the stitches are getting smaller and smaller because our circle is getting smaller. Also, you might not even see it, excuse my green nails from, we did painting the other day with my kids, and it's still a little stuck there. Okay, so this kind of looks like it's covered up most of the circle, but I do feel like I need to get one more little smaller stitch in there to help make it not look too rectangle-y. So I'm going to put one more stitch in there, even though technically I've covered up all my pin marks of the circle. There you go. Okay, now I'm going to come back to that first stitch and go to the right of it and come down. Now you always want to start in the same direction, like start your stitch in the same direction and come down the same direction. So for example, you see here, we're always starting at the top and coming down. That way you're always pulling your fabric the same direction and you're not pulling your fabric this way, that way, that way. That was a lot of words. Okay, just going straight down, right next to that other stitch. Oops, got a little knot. If you get a knot like that, it's not a real knot. You can typically just kind of use your needle and put it in through the little hole, pull it out, and just pull it. You just have to find what direction you need to pull so you don't make it worse. So I need to pull this end. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so I'm happy with that first little middle section. Now I'm going to move on to here. If at this point you see that there's still a little bit of a gap in your floss, just come back at the top where you feel like it needs to be filled in at and just go straight down. Just make sure you do the whole satin stitch, like all the way from the top to the bottom, and not just try and fill in the tiny little gap that might be showing. Now at this point you could, because you have plenty of floss, you could cut the weight again. You could cut about here, you see where my finger is, and tie a knot. Let me go ahead and just do that for you. Normally I just move on to the next little middle section because having just a little bit of floss pull from one end to the next middle section is not a big deal, but at least to show you how to tie off, you're going to cut about that much. At this point you can go ahead and tie a knot back on the other piece that's still attached to the needle. That way you don't forget to do it. And then over here, you're gonna just kind of flatten your floss a little, split it with your fingernails. So mine split about 3 and 3. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then just tie one knot and 2 knots. And then you're going to cut off the excess. Again, don't get too close to that knot because you don't want to compromise it. Okay, so that's how you tie off. Some people have different methods that they like. That's my favorite method. You could probably Google embroidery tie-offs and find another way, but that is my preferred method. I feel like the other ways, it tends to, I just get fearful it's going to be too loose. Okay, so my floss is still inside my needle. From when I finished over here, I have the knot on the other end because I already tied that. And now I'm going to start right here for the next center portion. Okay, so that is day one. Super easy, super simple, shouldn't take you long. I wanted to just give you a very slow start because tomorrow does get a little busier. Tomorrow we'll be working on 2 of these flowers, and then we'll leave the 3rd one for the next day. So come back tomorrow and we'll start working on the flowers.